have a story for you today. This time it's from the Daily Mail. Iran's most intense barrage yet on Middle East sees drones and missiles pound a region with Abu Dhabi marina hit, oil refinery ablaze, and damage across Gulf as air defenses battle down the bombs. Live updates. The article reports ongoing developments on Day 6 of the war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. The conflict begins after joint US and Israeli strikes against Iranian targets, including military and nuclear facilities. One of the early strikes reportedly killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, escalating tensions across the region. Following the strikes, Iran launched missile and drone attacks against Israel and United States military positions in the Middle East. The conflict quickly expanded beyond Iran and Israel to involve additional regional actors and allied groups. Hezbollah forces in Lebanon began launching attacks on Israel, prompting Israeli retaliations in Beirut. Israeli airstrikes targeted Iranian infrastructure and military sites, particularly facilities connected to Iran's nuclear program. Iranian missile strikes and drone targeted Israeli cities and strategic areas in response to the attacks. Several hundred projectiles were reportedly fired by Iran during the early days of the conflict. The war has caused casualties on both sides and significant damage to infrastructure. Civilian areas in Iran, including towns and public facilities, have also been affected during the fighting. Iran accused the United States and Israel of responsibility for civilian casualties in some strikes. United States officials said investigations were underway regarding reports of civilian deaths. President Donald Trump has played a central role in directing U.S. military involvement. The U.S. military campaign, described by officials as Operation Big Fury, is expected to continue for several weeks. Trump defended the strikes by arguing that Iran's nuclear program and missile capabilities pose a major threat to regional security. The conflict has disrupted shipping and trade in the Strait of Hormuz, a major global oil transit route. Iran warned commercial vessels and regional governments during the escalating naval tensions. The war has also triggered protests and demonstrations in multiple countries reacting to the attacks. Several governments in the Middle East have taken emergency measures, including evacuations and security alerts. Military forces from the United States and Israel have continued launching air and missile strikes against Iranian positions. Iran has vowed further retaliation and stated it will continue responding to attacks on its territory. Regional tensions remain high as fighting continues to expand into neighboring areas. Analysts warn that the conflict could widen further if additional countries or armed groups become involved. As of Day 6, there is no confirmed ceasefire and military operations by all sides remain ongoing. Let's break this down. This is a masterclass in how the world actually works. This is a story about strength, weakness, and the price of forgetting what you're supposed to be fighting for. The article titled Iran's Most Intense Barrage Yet on Middle East. It's Day 6 of the war, and right off the bat you see the chaos. Drones hitting Abu Dhabi's Yas Marina, smoke billowing over Dubai, people rushing to shelters, and oil refinery in Bahrain is on fire. Qatar is getting hit. Even Azerbaijan is getting dragged into it. It's a regional fire and it's spreading fast. But the real story isn't just the explosions, it's the reactions to them. It's the difference between how a real leader handles a crisis and how globalism fumbles the ball. Let's start with the good stuff. The article shows President Trump doing what he does best, projecting absolute unwavering strength. He is talking directly to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. His message is simple and brutal. Lay down your arms. You'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. Guaranteed death, that is not the language of diplomats. That's the language of a boss. It's the language of a commander who knows he has the biggest guns, look up big stick democracy. It's cool, and isn't afraid to use them. He's trying to break the will of his enemy. This is an example of force doctrine. Might makes. In short, force doctrine is a conceptual blueprint for how a military intends to fight and win wars. His Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is backing it up. Hegseth says, "But the dawn of the politically correct wars is over." He slams the old ways of doing things, big objectives with restrictive minimalist rules of engagement. He says their authorities are maxed out. This is a direct repudiation of 30 years of nation-building and counterinsurgency nonsense, where our soldiers had to ask a lawyer in Tampa to some permission to shoot back. The results speak for themselves. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper lays it out. We've struck nearly 200 targets. They've hit deeply buried missile launchers with 2,000-point bunker busters. They've destroyed Iran's equivalent of Space Command, and because of this overwhelming force, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90%. Drone strikes are down 83%, and they destroyed at least 30 ships. This is the Trump doctrine in action. It's not about endless occupation, it's about hitting the enemy so hard, so fast, and so decisively that they lose the ability and will to fight. It's about making the cost of aggression so astronomically high that no one can afford it. Hegseth even says, We've got no shortage of munitions. They can sustain this as long as they need to. This is what strength looks like. It's decisive, it's overwhelming, and it's effective. Now let's look at the other side. Let's look at the globalists, led by people like United Kingdom's Keir Starmer. The article is a humiliating litany of their failures. British nationalists trying to get out of Oman are calling the first United Kingdom evacuation flight a shit show. End quote. The plane was supposed to leave Oman, but it didn't. Why? Because the pilot needed to rest. You can't make this up. While Trump's military is dropping Uncle Busters, the British evacuation effort is being held up by union-mandated nap times. Starmer's response? He's sending 4 more Typhoon jets to Qatar. That's nice. The article states Spain joins Italy, France, and Netherlands in sending naval assets to Cyprus for the Royal Navy. Let that sink in. The United Kingdom, the nation that once ruled the waves and policed the globe, can't even get a single warship to fight on its own. It's being shown up by Spain and the Netherlands. This is what decades of defunding the military and prioritizing social programs over national strength gets you. Trump is openly furious with Starmer. The article notes he renews attack on very disappointing Starmer and doesn't deny calling him a loser. He's fuming at UK over Iran strikes. Why? Because weakness is contagious. When your supposed allies are hapless and incompetent, it creates more work for you. It creates vacuums that the enemy can exploit. Starmer's Britain isn't just an embarrassment, it's a strategic liability. And look at the people on the ground. The article has a story about a British tycoon who charters a £150,000 private jet to get out of Dubai, even though he was claiming it was perfectly safe. Another story talks about the expats who are scared to speak out about their scramble to leave Dubai because they face being jailed by social media police for criticizing their response. They're paying £100,000 for private jets to get out of there. This is the core of the globalist mindset. They talk a big game about international cooperation and soft power, but when the missiles start flying, they're useless. They can't protect their own citizens, they can't project force, and they can't even manage an evacuation. Their response is always more meetings, more strongly worded statements, and more reliance on the United States to bail them out. This war isn't just being fought with missiles, it's being fought with information. Iran is trying to control the narrative. Maxit points out that Iran is inflating reports of their success. They're claiming an American F-15 was shot down. False. And that 500 Americans have been killed. Also false. They've shut down the internet in their own country with connectivity at just 1% because they're hoping they can, and I quote, convince their own population that they are having success. This is a classic totalitarian move. When you're losing the battle, you try to win with propaganda. You lie to your own people to keep them in line. But the most revealing part of this whole story is how Israel killed the Ayatollah. It's mentioned in a side headline how Israel lured Ayatollah to his doom, then blew him up with missile from space. They used intelligence, deception, and cutting-edge technology to create a specific opportunity. They lured him with fake Shabbat celebrations. They played on his own psychology and his own traditions. Then, when he was in the perfect spot, they dropped a missile on him from orbit. That is not the act of clumsy, bureaucratic armies. That is the act of a sharp, cunning, and lethal force. It is a reminder that in this fight, intelligence and audacity are just as important as firepower. Oh, this is not all good after all. With these headlines, you're seeing the gas prices go up. But what does this mean? It means that leadership matters. It matters more than anything. The difference between Trump's guaranteed death and Starmer's pilot needs a rest is the difference between a nation that commands respect and a nation that is a laughingstock. Your vote isn't just about taxes or social issues. It's about choosing the kind of world you're going to live in. At least that's how it should be. Do you want leaders who project straight and deter aggression? Or leaders who give speeches and hope for the best? Second, in this act, the peace dividend is over. For decades, the West, especially Europe, has been living under the American security umbrella, spending its money on social programs and welfare, while letting the United States handle the hard stuff. That's your money. Hopefully, those days will end. This war is a reminder that evil exists and it is aggressive, and that it only respects one thing: strength. If you're not willing to pay for your own defense, you'll eventually have to pay the price of being defenseless. Third, it means you need to be prepared. This isn't just about geopolitics, it's about your own life. The world is becoming more dangerous and less predictable every day, and we must also be careful about the enemy within. The supply chains that bring you your food, your gas, and your electronics can be disrupted overnight. The financial systems that you rely on can be taken. This is a wake-up call to get your own life in order. Be self-reliant, have some savings, build a strong community around you. This one is particularly difficult since groups of people have done everything in their power to destroy community, since it lowers the probability of people rising up. Don't be like those expats in Dubai, totally dependent on a bumbling government for their survival. Fourth, it means you need to be skeptical of the media. The truth is the entire media ecosystem is geared toward panic and sensationalism. They'll show you the explosions and the scared people in shelters, but they'll miss the bigger picture. They'll miss the strategic significance of Trump's overwhelming force or Starmer's weakness. You have to learn to read between the lines. Benjamin Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel and one of the central decision-makers behind Israel's military operations against Iran. His government authorized major strikes on Iranian targets, arguing that Iran's nuclear and missile programs pose an existential threat to Israel. Netanyahu has also coordinated closely with United States leadership during the conflict. Ali Khamenei served as Iran's supreme leader and was the highest political and religious authority in the country. He oversaw Iran's response to Israeli and United States military actions before reportedly being killed in a targeted strike during the conflict. His death created major political uncertainty within Iran's leadership structure. He takes up as the United States Secretary of Defense responsible for overseeing the Department of Defense and military operations. During the conflict, he delivered briefings explaining the goals of United States strikes against Iranian targets. He emphasized that the operation aimed to degrade Iran's military capabilities rather than pursue regime changes. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, are Israel's national military organization responsible for defending the country and conducting offensive operations. In the conflict described in the article, the IDF carried out airstrikes and coordinated operations with the United States forces against Iranian targets. The IDF also manages Israel's missile defense and ground operations in nearby regions. Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is a powerful branch of Iran's armed forces created after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. It oversees Iran's ballistic missile program, regional proxy networks, and strategic military operations. The IRGC has been heavily involved in retaliatory attacks against Israeli and United States forces. Hezbollah is a Lebanese political and militant organization backed by Iran. It operates both as a political party in Lebanon and as a heavily armed militia that has fought in numerous conflicts with Israel. During the war described in the article, Hezbollah launched attacks against Israel in support in Iran. The United States Department of Defense, DoD, manages the United States military and coordinates national defense strategy. It oversees combat operations, troop deployment, and military planning across all branches of the armed forces. In the article, the DoD directs United States strikes and provides updates about military action in the Middle East. The United States Department of State handles diplomacy and foreign policy for the United States during the conflict. It issued warnings to American citizens in the Middle East and coordinated evacuation guidance due to security risks. The department also manages diplomatic communication with allies and regional governments. The CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, is the primary United States agency responsible for foreign intelligence gathering and covert operations. Intelligence provided by the CIA reportedly helped identify high-level Iranian targets during military strikes. The agency often supports military planning by supplying strategic intelligence. The Mossad is Israel's national intelligence agency responsible for civilian intelligence, covert operations, and counter-terrorism. It plays a key role in tracking threats to Israel abroad, including Iran's nuclear and military programs. Mossad reportedly contributed intelligence used in planning strikes against Iranian leadership and infrastructure. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is a military alliance made up of North American and European countries committed to collective defense. The alliance, missile defense systems, and regional security commitments can become relevant when conflicts in the Middle East threaten NATO members. In the article's broader context, NATO defenses were reportedly involved in intercepting missiles near Allied airspace. Have a nice day. Take care.